I got a 1963 split window coupe here for you today.
The 1963 Corvette Sting Ray is often praised as one of the greatest American sports cars ever built. But the truth behind its debut year is far stranger than most enthusiasts realize. Beneath its glamorous reputation lies a mix of internal disagreements, risky engineering decisions, and unexpected production quirks that nearly changed the car's fate. Some of these choices frustrated dealers, baffled buyers, and even sparked debates inside GM that still echo today. Yet many of these odd details ended up defining the Sting Ray's identity. Once you uncover what really went on behind the scenes, the '63 Corvette becomes even more legendary and far more surprising. Race car suspension for streets. The arrival of the 1963 Sting Ray marked a massive turning point for American sports cars, specifically regarding how they handled corners. Before this model, the Corvette relied on a solid rear axle, which severely limited its agility on twisting roads. The 1963 model changed everything by introducing a revolutionary independent rear suspension system. This was not just a standard upgrade, however. The engineering team, led by the legendary Zora Arkus Duntov, derived this sophisticated setup directly from a hardcore experimental project. The specific design, featuring half shafts and a transverse leaf spring, was originally developed and stress-tested on the SERV-1 concept vehicle. SERV stood for Chevrolet Engineering Research Vehicle, meaning the production Sting Ray was effectively utilizing race-bred geometry that Duntov had used to push mechanical boundaries. It is remarkable to think that a showroom vehicle shared such intimate DNA with a one-off engineering marvel. Despite this massive leap forward at the rear, the car remained a fascinating blend of different eras. The front suspension was surprisingly conservative, retaining the unequal A-arms and anti-roll bar configuration from the previous C1 generation. Furthermore, this futuristic suspension was paired with old-fashioned 11-inch drum brakes on all four corners, as disc brakes would not become standard equipment until 1965. This combination of experimental racing technology in the back and carryover components in the front makes the 1963 chassis a unique mechanical hybrid in Corvette history. Critics saw it coming. The debut of the 1963 Sting Ray triggered a level of excitement among automotive journalists that is rarely seen in the industry. When the specialized press finally got their hands on the new chassis, the acclaim was instant and overwhelming. Testers at Motor Trend provided a perfect illustration of this generational leap. They candidly admitted that they used to believe the previous solid axle model handled corners very well. But after driving the Sting Ray, they felt the old car simply could not compare to the new one. The improvement in agility was so drastic that it rendered the previous generation dynamically obsolete overnight. Road and Track magazine offered an even more prophetic assessment. Instead of just praising the speed, they looked at the market positioning and boldly stated that the new Corvette would have very few peers on the road. This was a profound claim for an American vehicle at the time, suggesting it could finally run with Europe's finest machinery. The car was immediately recognized as a landmark design that successfully fused aggressive American horsepower with the refined style usually reserved for Italian exotics. Looking back, those early critics were entirely correct. They identified the 1963 model as a future legend the moment it rolled off the production line, validating the massive engineering risks Chevrolet had taken. Styled like a predatory fish. The aggressive and predatory look of the 1963 Sting Ray did not originate from a traditional automotive sketch, but rather from a piece of taxidermy. Bill Mitchell, the powerful head of GM Design, kept a mounted miniature short-fin mako shark in his office during the development phase. He became captivated by the creature's sleek form and gradient coloring, deciding that the next Corvette needed to embody that same sense of organic speed. Mitchell tasked designer Larry Shinoda with translating these biological cues into automotive sheet metal. This unique directive led to the creation of several experimental vehicles, including the XP 724-seater and the famous XP 755 Mako Shark concept. These prototypes served as the direct genetic ancestors of the production C2. It is remarkable to consider that the sharp nose, the side gills, and the tapered tail of this mechanical icon were all deliberate attempts to mimic the sea creature hanging on Mitchell's wall. The transition from a biological specimen to a fiberglass sports car was seamless, resulting in a vehicle that looked like it was moving even when standing still. When the car finally reached showrooms, it bore the name Sting Ray to maintain the aquatic theme. Yet, its fundamental shape and stance were entirely indebted to that specific Mako shark. This connection remains one of the most literal examples of biomimicry in automotive history. The first factory coupe arrives. The 1963 model year represented a monumental shift in Chevrolet history, marking the arrival of the second-generation Corvette. While the mechanical upgrades were significant, the most transformative change was the introduction of a completely new body style. For the first full decade of its existence, the Corvette had been exclusively an open-top roadster. The 1963 Sting Ray shattered this tradition by offering the first-ever production Corvette in a coupe configuration. This addition of a fixed roof was a major strategic move to broaden the car's appeal, resulting in the immediately recognizable split-window design that is now legendary among collectors. It is easy to forget that the Corvette did not start its life as a dominator of the streets. The initial 1953 model suffered from a lackluster debut, powered by an underwhelming inline six-cylinder engine that produced a mere 150 horsepower. Those early cars also struggled with poor quality control regarding their novel fiberglass bodies, leading many to dismiss the Corvette as a toy rather than a serious performance vehicle. The arrival of the enclosed Sting Ray coupe signaled that those developmental struggles were over. By offering a rigid, weather-tight cabin, Chevrolet was declaring that the Corvette had graduated from a fair-weather convertible into a serious, all-weather grand touring machine capable of rivaling the best sports cars the world had to offer. Production soared by 50%. The arrival of the redesigned 1963 Sting Ray triggered a buying frenzy that Chevrolet was arguably not fully prepared to handle. The car was an instant success the moment it hit dealership floors, captivating buyers with its blend of futuristic styling, raw V8 horsepower, and a surprisingly luxurious interior filled with power amenities. While the executives surely hoped for a positive reception, the actual market response was overwhelming. The demand was so intense that it created a significant bottleneck at the manufacturing level. The St. Louis factory, which was responsible for assembling these machines, found itself struggling to keep pace with the flood of incoming orders. The final production statistics from that year illustrate just how drastic this shift was. Chevrolet ended up building nearly 22,000 units for the 1963 model year. To put that number into perspective, this represented a staggering 50% increase in total volume compared to the previous year. In the automotive world, year-over-year sales growth is usually measured in small single-digit percentages, so a 50% jump for a niche sports car is almost unheard of. It serves as undeniable proof that the public was desperate for the modernization that the Sting Ray offered. This immediate commercial triumph validated the radical engineering changes and secured the C2 generation's place on the assembly line until the third generation took over in 1967. A spine dictated the design. The most famous feature of the 1963 coupe, the split rear window, was not merely a random aesthetic choice, but a specific requirement of a larger anatomical theme. Bill Mitchell, the influential chief of styling, was deeply committed to incorporating organic forms into his machine designs. His work was heavily inspired by the anatomy of marine predators, often featuring visual references to gills, wings, and tails. For the Sting Ray coupe, Mitchell envisioned a car that possessed a literal backbone. The design featured a sharp, folded crease running along the curvature of the roof, an area technically known as the tumble home. Mitchell insisted that this crease needed to act as a continuous, spine-like element defining the car's center line. To achieve this look, the spine had to flow seamlessly from the highest point of the roof all the way down to the rear deck without breaking. A traditional single-pane rear window would have interrupted this flow, forcing the line to stop at the glass. The solution was to split the window into two distinct halves, allowing the fiberglass bodywork to continue right down the middle. This design decision prioritized the artistic integrity of the spine over rearward visibility, proving just how dedicated the design team was to the marine metaphor. The result was a continuous dorsal line that gave the car its aggressive, organic stance, mimicking the uninterrupted spine of a living creature. Ladder frame lowered the car. The engineering underneath the 1963 Sting Ray was just as radical as its exterior styling. To achieve better handling dynamics, Chevrolet completely abandoned the previous X-frame structure. In its place, they utilized a modern, rigid ladder-type frame. This was not a minor adjustment, but a fundamental shift in how the car was constructed. The most significant result of this switch was that it lowered the car's center of gravity by more than 2 inches. In the world of sports car geometry, dropping the weight that much is a massive engineering victory that directly translates to flatter cornering and better stability. The secret lay in how the new frame interacted with the interior. Unlike the previous generation where occupants essentially sat on top of the chassis, the new ladder design allowed the seats to be positioned down inside the structure of the frame itself. This meant the driver was physically lower to the ground, encased by the vehicle's skeleton. The frame itself was robust, featuring 5 cross members for added stiffness, yet it was more compact, measuring approximately 4 inches shorter than the 1962 model. This compact, low-slung foundation provided the mechanical basis for the Sting Ray's legendary agility, proving that the redesign went far deeper than just fiberglass panels. Fuel-injected powerhouse engine. While the 1963 Corvette was a design masterpiece, it was also a serious performance machine offering 4 distinct variations of the 327 cubic inch V8. For the ultimate thrill seeker, the top-tier choice was the legendary L84 engine. This power plant was rated at a massive 360 horsepower, a figure that placed it well above its stablemates. The secret to this engine's dominance was that it abandoned traditional carburetors entirely. Instead, it utilized the sophisticated Rochester Ramjet mechanical fuel injection system. This advanced fuel delivery technology allowed the engine to breathe more efficiently and respond instantly to throttle inputs, earning these models the nickname Fuelies among enthusiasts. With the L84 engine under the hood, the Sting Ray became a genuine rocket, capable of sprinting from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 6 seconds. That level of acceleration was considered exhilarating at the time, and remains impressive even by modern standards. Because of this performance pedigree, original fuel-injected examples are incredibly prized today. Collectors go to great lengths to verify authenticity, checking for matching numbers on the engine pad and ensuring the date codes align perfectly. They even inspect the underside of the vehicle to find natural, unpainted factory fiberglass pans with original Bond seams. Finding a survivor that retains this specific mechanical fuel injection system represents the pinnacle of collecting for this model year. Engine shifted for driver comfort. When you sit inside a 1963 Sting Ray, the cockpit feels surprisingly spacious for a sports car of that era. This is not an accident, but the result of a radical and invisible engineering trick. And to optimize the ergonomics, Chevrolet engineers decided to break the rules of symmetry. They physically shifted the entire engine and drivetrain assembly 1 full inch to the right side of the chassis. This was a deliberate move designed solely to maximize legroom for the driver. Without this significant offset, the transmission tunnel would have encroached heavily on the footwell, forcing the pedals to be skewed to the left. Thanks to this mechanical shift, the driver sits perfectly aligned with the direction of travel, with the pedals positioned straight ahead rather than at an awkward angle. While the accelerator was angled beautifully for comfort, the system was not without its quirks. The clutch pedal became notorious for having an incredibly long range of travel. It required such a deep press that a driver could not release it without lifting their heel entirely off the floor mat. This distinctive characteristic made navigating through bumper-to-bumper traffic a genuine annoyance and a physical workout for the left leg. Despite that minor flaw, the decision to move the entire heart of the car just to accommodate the driver's feet remains a fascinating example of how much the design team prioritized the human element. Drums cast into wheel rims. Braking performance had historically been a major complaint regarding early Corvettes, often described as the weak link in an otherwise potent package. For the revolutionary 1963 model, Chevrolet engineers recognized the need for improvement, but stopped short of adopting modern disc brakes, a feature many critics felt the car desperately needed. Instead, they utilized a Delco Moraine power brake system that featured a fascinating construction method. The design employed massive 11-inch steel drums that were not just bolted on, but were actually cast directly into the wheel rims themselves. This integration was a unique engineering solution aimed at managing the immense heat generated by stopping a high-performance V8 sports car. The system was calibrated to send nearly 60% of the stopping force to the front wheels, specifically 58.8%, to maintain stability during hard deceleration. Despite these sophisticated manufacturing techniques, The standard brake linings were still prone to fading quickly under heavy use. Drivers found that aggressive driving could easily overwhelm the stock setup, leading to a temporary loss of braking confidence. However, the system did have a redeeming quality in that the cooling-off period required to restore full stopping power was very short. For owners who intended to take their Sting Ray to the track, Chevrolet offered optional sintered iron brake linings. These heavy-duty upgrades were considered essential for racing, as the standard equipment simply could not handle the rigors of competition without significant performance loss. 3 inches of steering adjustment. Chevrolet went to great lengths to ensure the 1963 Sting Ray could accommodate drivers of almost any stature, introducing a level of ergonomic customization that was quite advanced for the era. A standout feature was the steering mechanism, which included a telescoping column offering a generous 3 inches of length adjustment. This allowed the driver to physically pull the wheel closer or push it away to find the perfect reach. The steering wheel itself was designed for serious driving, featuring a steep 15-degree rake and a thin rim that offered excellent grip. The designers also wisely kept the entire semicircle between the 9 and 3 o'clock positions free of spoke attachments, ensuring a clean hold for hands during aggressive maneuvering. Despite this telescoping capability, contemporary road testers found they rarely needed to extend the column. Most preferred to keep the wheel in its deepest position and instead rely on the versatile seat adjustments. The bucket seats offered 4 inches of fore and aft travel and, quite remarkably, allowed for vertical customization. Owners could bolt the seats into 3 different height positions, varying the vertical span by over an inch to improve visibility. While the backrest angle was harder to change, requiring the adjustment of set screws at the floor, this combination of a telescoping wheel and multi-position seats meant that test drivers ranging from 5'7" to 6'4" could all find a nearly ideal driving position. A buzzer protected the engine. The 360 horsepower fuel-injected V8 was the absolute pinnacle of Chevrolet engineering in 1963. Known internally as the L84, this power plant was a high-strung mechanical masterpiece designed for maximum output. It featured exotic hardware for the time, including a larger volume aluminum manifold and improved ram pipes that allowed it to breathe freely at high speeds. Because this engine was so potent and capable of climbing through the rev range with terrifying speed, Chevrolet engineers genuinely worried that drivers might inadvertently push it past its physical limits. To prevent catastrophic failure, they installed a surprising safety feature that is almost unheard of in modern passenger cars. The vehicle was equipped with a distinct warning buzzer, specifically linked to the tachometer. In an era long before electronic rev limiters could automatically cut fuel to save the motor, this audible alarm was a critical line of defense. If the driver let the engine scream too close to the red line, the buzzer would sound off, demanding an immediate gear shift. This was necessary because the solid mechanical lifters in the L84 valve train were not forgiving of over-revving. It serves as a reminder that driving a high-performance machine in the early 60s required acute attention. While modern supercars manage the engine for you, the 1963 Fuelie relied entirely on the driver listening to that buzzing dashboard to keep the expensive internal components from flying apart. Designer interned during Wakiwa 2. The aggressive and liberated lines of the 1963 Sting Ray stand as a definitive symbol of American freedom, yet the man who shaped them endured a profound loss of his own liberty. Larry Shinoda, the brilliant designer who translated Bill Mitchell's concepts into production reality, survived a deeply traumatic childhood chapter that remains obscure to many car enthusiasts. Born in 1930 to Japanese immigrants, Shinoda had already faced tragedy with the death of his father when he was just 6 years old. However, his hardships escalated dramatically with the outbreak of World War II. In a dark turn of events, the United States government classified Japanese Americans as enemy aliens. Despite being an American-born citizen, a young Shinoda was forcibly taken from his home and interned at the Manzanar War relocation camp in the California desert. He was confined there for years alongside his mother, sister, and his entire maternal extended family, including his grandmother, uncle, and 2 aunts. It is a staggering historical irony that the creative force behind Chevrolet's most patriotic sports car spent his formative teenage years imprisoned behind barbed wire by his own government. This injustice did not stifle his talent. Instead, Shinoda emerged from the camp with a resilience that likely fueled his drive to succeed in the competitive world of Detroit design. His journey from a relocation camp to the helm of the Corvette studio is a testament to an indomitable spirit. Fuley briefly held dominance. In 1963, the undisputed king of the Corvette options list was the L84 engine. This fuel-injected 327 cubic inch V8 produced 360 brake horsepower and represented the pinnacle of American engineering finesse. It was an expensive piece of hardware, commanding an extra $480, which was a significant sum for the time. Enthusiasts willingly paid this premium to pair the high-revving motor with a Borg-Warner 4-speed manual, believing they had purchased the ultimate expression of the sports car. At that moment, it seemed that precise mechanical fuel injection was the undisputed future of performance. Yet, the dominance of this sophisticated small block was incredibly short-lived. The automotive landscape changed rapidly, and by 1965, the fuel-injected 327 was effectively dethroned by a completely different animal. Chevrolet introduced the big block 396 turbojet, shifting the focus from high-tech efficiency to brute force displacement. The arrival of the big block made the expensive fuel injection system seem suddenly unnecessary to those chasing pure numbers. This transition marked the beginning of an intense horsepower war, where engine sizes ballooned uncontrollably. The trend continued with the introduction of the massive 427 cubic inch engines, culminating in the race-bred L88 option of 1967, which produced around 600 horsepower. It is ironic that the 1963 Fuley, which was years ahead of its time technologically, was pushed aside so quickly by the old-school approach of simply making the engine bigger. Peter Brock's team design. When enthusiasts discuss the revolutionary styling of the 1963 Sting Ray, the conversation almost always centers on Bill Mitchell, the legendary vice president of GM Design. While Mitchell's team certainly guided the car through the complex journey to production, the actual seed of inspiration came from a much more surprising source. The foundational sketch that established the groundbreaking silhouette of the C2 was created by Peter Brock. What makes this historical detail so staggering is that Brock was only 19 years old at the time he outlined the future of America's sports car. It is difficult to comprehend that one of the most enduring and mature shapes in automotive history sprang from the mind of a teenager. Brock had been identified as a prodigy and brought into the secretive world of GM styling, where his fresh perspective allowed him to dream up a form that was radically different from anything on the road. His initial vision was incredibly forward-thinking, perhaps too much so for the manufacturing capabilities of the era. As the concept moved toward the assembly line, the harsh realities of mass production and internal marketing strategies forced the team to alter several details. Consequently, the car you see today is technically a compromised version of that original teenage dream. Nevertheless, the essential lines and the aggressive stance that define the Sting Ray are the direct result of Peter Brock's youthful genius, proving that industry experience is not always a prerequisite for creating an icon. Inspired by a German racer. While the official story often cites marine life as the primary inspiration for the Sting Ray, a fascinating alternative history suggests the iconic roofline actually came from Europe. Specifically, the design seems to have been lifted directly from an obscure pre-war German racing coupe, known as the Adler Trumpf Rennlimousine. This was an incredibly rare machine, with only about 10 ever built, and one managed to survive World War II to be brought to America by a returning soldier as a war trophy. In 1959, the owner of this eccentric German car visited the GM Tech Center, where a staff member snapped several photographs of its unique, divided rear glass. At the time, Bill Mitchell was deeply involved in testing the public reaction to his Sting Ray racer, but felt the roof design was not quite resolved. When Mitchell saw the developed images of the Adler, he reportedly stopped everything. He recognized immediately that the German car's aerodynamic roof was the missing puzzle piece for his new Corvette. He handed the photos to lead designer Larry Shinoda and instructed him that this specific look was exactly what he required for the production model. It is startling to think that the most distinctively American design feature of the 1960s might actually be a direct homage to a 1938 German aerodynamic experiment. This connection proves that Mitchell had a brilliant eye for spotting potential greatness, understanding that the Adler's split rear window would translate perfectly into the futuristic language of the jet age. Massive tank for racing. Chevrolet introduced the RPO Z06 option code as a comprehensive special performance package, effectively creating a factory-built race car for the public. This option was strictly limited to the coupe body style, as engineers determined the convertible lacked the necessary structural rigidity to handle the stress of competition. The most startling feature of this package was the installation of an enormous 36-gallon fuel tank. This massive fiberglass reservoir occupied a significant portion of the rear interior, dominating the space behind the seats. While it eliminated luggage capacity, it provided a crucial advantage for endurance racing, allowing the car to stay on the track for extended stints, while competitors were stuck in the pits refueling. The rest of the Z06 equipment list was equally uncompromising. The suspension was significantly stiffened, with heavy-duty shock absorbers and a thicker anti-roll bar to minimize body roll. The braking system featured sintered iron linings capable of withstanding extreme heat, aided by vented backing plates and dedicated air scoops for cooling. A peculiar mechanical detail of these race-bred brakes was that the self-adjusting mechanism only functioned when the car was moving forward, unlike standard brakes that adjusted in reverse. To acquire this hardware, buyers were forced to select the high-output fuel-injected engine, the 4-speed Warner transmission, and a positive traction differential. This mandatory combination ensured that every Z06 leaving the factory was a serious machine focused entirely on speed and endurance. Duntov finally proud in Europe. The 1963 Sting Ray Sport Coupe was more than just a design triumph. It was a massive leap in practicality that fundamentally changed how the world viewed American sports cars. Before this model, the Corvette was often dismissed by serious drivers as a crude fiberglass toy that could not truly compete with sophisticated European machinery. The introduction of the coupe attracted a completely new demographic of buyers who demanded a weather-tight, usable vehicle rather than just a weekend roadster. This shift in perception was so powerful that Chevrolet had to double the production schedules at the St. Louis assembly plant just to keep up with the demand compared to the previous year. What makes this generation truly special is how it achieved world-class status. It matched the performance of foreign Grand Tourers without copying their engineering, arriving at the same destination via a uniquely American path. The ultimate validation came from Zora Arkus Duntov himself, the man known as the father of the Corvette. He famously admitted that this was the first time he finally had a Corvette he would be proud to drive in Europe. That admission is startling because it reveals just how inadequate he felt the previous generations were on the global stage. With the Sting Ray, Duntov knew he finally had a machine that could stand toe-to-toe with the best from Italy and Germany, all while costing substantially less than its foreign rivals. The ultra-rare Fuelis. While the 1963 Corvette is globally celebrated for its striking split-window bodywork, a specific mechanical configuration makes certain examples significantly more valuable than others. The high-performance L84 engine, distinguished by its Rochester mechanical fuel injection, stood as the technological zenith of the lineup. Enthusiasts affectionately call these models Fuelis, but back in 1963, they were a rare sight on the assembly line. Due to the high cost and maintenance requirements of this advanced induction system, most buyers opted for standard carbureted engines. As a result, the final production count for these fuel-injected machines is surprisingly low given the overall popularity of the model. Chevrolet produced only 2,610 original factory Fuelis for the entire model year. This limited volume means that the vast majority of surviving 1963 Sting Rays do not possess this race-bred DNA. This scarcity has turned the original fuel-injected coupe into one of the most coveted items in the collector car world. Authentic examples are now subject to intense scrutiny and often undergo comprehensive frame-off restorations to preserve their history. Collectors obsess over verifying every component, searching for specific details like date-coded, correct knockoff-style hubcaps to prove the car is the real deal. The combination of the one-year-only body style and this rare, high-output engine option creates a perfect storm of exclusivity that few other American cars can match. The costly comfort option. The 1963 model year was a milestone for creature comforts, marking the very first time Chevrolet offered factory air conditioning in a Corvette. While this sounds like a standard requirement today, it was an absolute luxury at the time and remains surprisingly difficult to find on surviving examples. The primary reason for this scarcity was the astronomical cost associated with staying cool. Checking the option box for air conditioning added $412.80 to the final bill. While that figure might seem negligible in modern currency, it represented a staggering 10% of the car's total new price. To put that into perspective, it would be equivalent to paying a 10% premium on a modern supercar just for climate control. Because of this steep financial barrier, the vast majority of buyers simply refused to pay for it. Consequently, only 278 Corvettes were built with this feature during the entire production run, making it one of the rarest options of the year. It usually took a specific type of buyer living in an extreme climate to justify the expense. For instance, surviving documentation shows a rare ermine white example with a red interior was sold new in Phoenix, Arizona, where the desert heat made that 10% surcharge a necessity rather than a luxury. Today, finding a Sting Ray with original factory air conditioning is a major event in the collecting world. The 1963 Corvette Sting Ray stands as one of the most fascinating machines in automotive history, proving that the story behind the car is just as compelling as the drive itself. It is incredible to realize that this American icon was styled after a taxidermied shark hanging in an office, yet featured a roofline inspired by an obscure pre-war German racer. The engineering was just as eccentric, from an engine physically shifted 1 inch to the right for driver comfort, to a dashboard buzzer that screamed at you to shift gears before the engine blew. These details demonstrate that the C2 generation was a collection of radical ideas and daring risks that ultimately paid off. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden history of the Sting Ray.